Welcome everyone to an Out to Lunch webinar brought to you by the Earth Science Information Partners Education Committee. Future webinars you can register for at the bit.ly that you see there on the screen. Next slide, please, Dawn.
Start recording, please.
I did, thank you. Oops, I think you went.
I didn't mean to go 2 slides.
Yeah. So these webinar series are 10-minute demonstrations of Earth science data tools and resources with 5 minutes afterwards for Q&A. You can visit our wiki page for all the past presentations or check out our ESIP YouTube playlist for Out to Lunch. And with that, I will turn it over to Don Haas, who will introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Don Haas. I'm the Director of Teacher Programming at the Paleontological Research Institution. And I'm also a past president of the National Association of Geoscience Teachers and a former professor of science education, as well as a former high school and middle school science teacher. And I am going to talk about some resources from the Paleontological Research Institution, which are in a new package of Earth at Home. There is the URL, which maybe one of my co-hosts can put into the chat. And it's really a family of resources that we're bringing together under the mastermind of John Hendricks, who is on the call and will be the Out to Lunch speaker next week on one of the specific pieces here. We've been creating resources for earth science education for decades, and this is sort of a reorganization and update of that, and also development of new resources and making it easier to find. We are early in the process. This went live in late August, I believe, and we'll be adding content regularly we anticipate, for years to come. We've got 3 pieces to it. We're on the home page now, and you can see we've got some beautiful introductions there. And we've got the Here on Earth section, which let me get you all out of the way, which gives you an earth science textbook of sorts, and it's beginning with earth science of the northeastern United States, and this is a descendant of our teacher-friendly guides to earth science, and the first one of those was the northeastern US, and we're now bringing that content into Earth at Home, and you can see some of the resources there. It is broken down by the Northeast and then the geological regions within the Northeast, and we'll be adding regions to cover the whole United States over the course of time, and the teacher-friendly guides to the geology and earth science of the US exist already and already do that. They'll be updated as they're brought in here. One of those updates is bringing some more color to some of the imagery, which was black and white in the original Northeast guide. Most of the other guides have some color imagery, but there will be more of that coming. And I, by the way, am going super, super quick because of the nature of Out to Lunch. So we're flying through. The second section is the Digital Encyclopedia of Earth Science. And that also has sections, and this introductory page includes the various pieces you saw there. And I'll suggest that the big ideas are a good place to start, where we sketch out 5 big ideas that everyone ought to understand about the nature of the Earth system. And it gives a brief introduction here and some illustrative examples. We also have the Digital Atlas of Ancient Life, which is what John will be talking about next week. So I won't say much there other than to give you a quick peek at it. And we have the virtual science section, which includes resources for virtual fieldwork, which my colleagues at PRI and I have been working on now for 15-ish years. Throughout that history, it's generally been driven by the question of why does this place look the way it does? And the virtualfieldwork.org website from days of yore is being updated. The content from there is being updated and ported into here, and new content is again being added regularly here. This includes tools on not only using VFEs and a catalog of virtual fieldwork experiences, but also tools and tips for making your own VFEs, which I think is my ultimate goal for much of this work is not using virtual fieldwork to replace actual fieldwork, but as a catalyst for it. And my hope is that educators will actually work with the learners they're working with to create their own virtual fieldwork experiences about sites local to where they are or places where they might go on field trips. And this has some tools and how-tos on how to do some of that. The virtual labs section is new with sort of pandemic inspired, and talks some about not only virtual labs, but remote labs, where the distinction between virtual and remote labs is virtual labs are labs that can be done completely online. Remote labs are, in some instances anyway, taking advantage of your students being dispersed either across your school district, if you're a K-12 teacher, or around the country or around the state if you're a professor, and having them collect data where they are about their local earth science and environmental science, and in ways that they can share with others to do that work. And more will be coming here that is, as I said, fairly new. And we've got virtual collections, and we've got rocks and fossils, lots and lots of fossils, and a growing collection of rocks. And that is the few-minute flyover that may have been even quicker than expected, but leaves us some time for questions. So I'm going to go to you for questions. Anything you want to take a closer look at?
I was interested in your field work versus field trips link.
Sure. That is an area of great interest of mine. And the virtual fieldwork intro page has a lot of content on giving the overview of partly about virtual fieldwork versus virtual field trips. Sort of a soundbite answer to the question is that field trips, whether they're virtual or actual, are often characterized by the field trip leader or the teacher pointing things out. And field work, our goal is to engage students in figuring things out rather than in having things pointed out to them. That is tricky work. I think it's in some ways more challenging to push along, but I think the learners engaged in figuring things out are far more likely to hold on to their learnings than the ones who have things pointed out to them. And we actually have in our catalog of VFEs some that do a lot of explaining, and some where there's more left to the learners to figure things out. Excuse me. Let's see. And we've reorganized here a little bit, so oops, that's not where I meant to go. Can I go back from there? Nope. And we are in the process of doing some updates here, so I'm not as familiar quite as with the layout as I was a week ago. So there's some content here on virtual fieldwork and the next generation science standards, and a good sort of overview of how to incorporate virtual fieldwork into your teaching. One point of consideration is that if you're teaching an earth science course or a biology course or an environmental science course, for the most part, every unit plays out in some meaningful way outside your classroom door, or if your students are remote, outside the door of their home. And looking at what's local is a really great way, we think, to engage students in durable learnings there. So there's a little bit of a sermon on Luann's question. Other questions, comments, or follow-up from Luann if desired.
Thank you, Don. You're definitely moving it toward the next generation standards of figuring out rather than being told.
Yeah, and I'll note too that one of the most important things that we've done, which I don't remember where the link is now that we've reorganized a little bit, is come up with a set of questions that can be asked about any site. They're phrased in such a way that you can productively investigate, and this is where I just was, wasn't it? I don't know where the questions went.
But that would make the artifact of the VFE still be useful in field work instead of just telling then, if you do those types.
That's right. Yeah,
Nice.
and one of the ideas too is that you can use the VFEs that we have in our catalog as sites that you can compare to wherever it is that you are, to your local environment, and therefore use the local to understand the global.
So there's a question in the chat about virtual labs, and are you planning to add on more?
We are. We've only just begun on the virtual labs. There's really only just a couple there, and I mentioned the distinction between virtual lab and a remote lab, and my hope is that we'll have more of those, and actually we already do. We just don't have them yet cataloged in this introductory page, but over the coming months we'll add more there, and hopefully that will become less necessary for the world, but but we actually think these will live on beyond the pandemic. We have some resources connected to our teacher-friendly guide to climate change and the Teach Climate Science page within the Paleontological Research Institutions page, which, you know, PRI has multiple web pages, and we have some labs there, for example, on calculating how much carbon is sequestered in a tree, where you can look at different species of tree and measure their diameter breast height and get an idea of how much carbon a particular tree, either on your school property or on your students, in your students' neighborhoods, or whatever, how much carbon it's sequestering. And I'll note, I'll blink my camera off for just a second to show my profile picture, which is me holding up a 2x4. And the reason that I'm holding up that 8-foot 2x4 is that 2x4 has about the same amount of carbon in it as a gallon of gasoline does. So for every gallon of gasoline you burn, if you want to take that carbon back out of the air, you need to grow a 2x4's worth of wood and leave it alone forever. So that's an interesting thing to think about. Shelley, you've got a question?
In the chat, are the virtual labs interactive, or are they a repository of images? And Lorraine, you are welcome to unmute and maybe explain a little bit more what you're looking for.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I was just wondering if the students could, for instance, if you have some rocks or minerals, can the students manipulate them in any way or turn them around or zoom in,
Yes.
zoom out, that type of thing?
Yeah, so let me go to the
Okay.
virtual collections page and show you that. And go into the rocks there. So we've got classes of rocks. Is there one in particular you'd like to play around with?
Oh, anyone's fine. I'm a carbonate fan, so.
Okay. Here. And these are hosted on Sketchfab, so they're 3D models. So here's a limestone, which is loading. Maybe it's loading. We're also working on materials sensitive to the digital divide. This is a little bit slower to load than some of our other pages. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. So here's a chunk of limestone on our property.
Can we contribute to these?
I'll let John answer that question. John, you want to unmute yourself and answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, so if you were to create a 3D model and then add it to Sketchfab, we'd be happy to incorporate it into our, into our collections of rocks, minerals, or fossils. So if you are creating 3D models yourself, or you're thinking about doing it, just give us a buzz, and we'd be happy to see what you've made and incorporate it. So the answer is yes.
Awesome.
Well, I was thinking for Lorraine and others, there's some iPhone-based 3D imagery tools out there that would be a great student project, to in there, and maybe it wouldn't go into this collection, but then you can compare with what you've got.
And my computer is being a little clunky today, which is unfortunate, but you can actually pick, there we go, there we are. So you can actually pick it up and spin it around and zoom in and see the many, many fossils in this particular chunk of phosphoriferous limestone. I'm John, how many rocks are currently in the rock collection roughly?
I'm not sure about the total number. So unlike the fossil collection, which I'll highlight next week, the rock collection includes, sort of 1/3 PRI specimens and 2/3 just other specimens that I found on Sketchfab. If I had to guesstimate, there's probably 60 or 70 specimens in the collection right now, but we're hoping to grow that over time.
Mm.
And in the chat, I've just added the page that Don's scrolling through right now in case you want to have a look.
Yep, thanks. So all of these that I'm scrolling through are these 3D models. And as Shelley mentioned, there are tools. We linked to one from the virtual fieldwork tools page that I've used quite a bit, Turnio, which is available for the iPhone only. They have said for years on their page that it's coming soon to the Android, but it's not there yet. But it now costs $4.99, but it's pretty easy to use it. And if you used it before 2020, it was harder to use, but they did a nice update earlier this year. So there's a link for the Turnio app there, as well as a bunch of other apps for capturing aspects of your field site. And a picture here is taken using the Google Street View app to take 360 panoramas on smartphones. That's free and very, very easy to use. This was created on my my older iPhone a few years ago. I don't remember. I think it was an iPhone 6. So very easy to make these on a smartphone. And this, by the way, is from the critical zone, the VFE of the Southern Sierra Critical Zone Observatory. And this tree right here is one of the CZ trees on the site, and it's one of the most heavily instrumented trees in the world. You can see cables and hoses running up the tree's trunk, and you can see these pipes going down into the ground, and those are connected to a variety of sensors measuring everything they can sort of think of to measure about the tree, and including what's going on in the root mass. Shelley.
I have a quick technical question for myself. Are you using for the website a content management system?
Yes, and John is the genius behind that, so I'll let him answer that too.
Yeah, so the backbone of the website is WordPress, and it has an add-on theme called called X Theme Pro is how we're building it, but the backbone is essentially a WordPress website.
Thank you. Yeah, we're restructuring our website and we're using WordPress, so maybe this plugin would be good for redoing our educational resources. This is really a nice looking site, looks pretty easy to get through too.
Yeah, the add-on software is really nice and easy to use. I'll put the name of that company in the chat. It's the add-on for WordPress is like $75 or something. It's quite reasonable. It's a one-time fee. Yeah,
and John is the power behind what's made this site so beautiful and functional. I'm just following his lead when I plug in stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? I see there's stuff in the chat that I haven't looked at.
There we go.
Yeah, John just put in the info on ThemeCo X Pro.
So it doesn't appear that we have any other questions. So I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dawn, for, let me start my video, for your presentation today. And if you can put up the last slide,
Yes,
I'll introduce next week. So you've heard from John a couple of times tonight, and next week he's going to present on the Digital Atlas of Ancient Life, which is part of this Earth at Home website. So that will be same time, 12 noon Central Time next week, and you can register for it at the same bit.ly you registered for this, but we'll be sending you all an invite. And I would say in the next 2 days, but maybe today, we'll see, the recording of this webinar will be posted, as well as the slides with the link to Earth at Home. And maybe I'll capture these chat links and throw them in there somewhere, because they're good links. So thank you very much.
and I just put my email in the chat, and it's one of several emails that will get to me. If you've got any questions or suggestions, you can send them to that.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nice way to repackage things and make it ready to roll again.
Yeah.